Jamahiriya TV. Jamahiriya First Channel. Our movement will be approved by history.
News of the resistance. The rat model of freedom is the freedom to deceive and poison Libyans with junk food. Rats engaged in various food production, including baby food, apply dangerous food ingredients that can cause infertility and other serious diseases. Especially dangerous are these so-called supplements for children. It's such companies as Al Nasim for Food Industries, which processes milk and dairy for yogurt and ice cream. Its owner, Mohammed Al-Raed, is a known Mizrata rat. Tellingly, his company was established prior to the Jamahiriya occupation, and at that period, quality control ensured production was high quality. For better city and port of Mizrata development, an offshore tax-free zone was established. Moreover, state benefits and assistance unavailable in Western Europe or the United States were implemented there. Al Nasim for Food Industries owner was pleased to support the country's occupation because, similar to other greedy businessmen, available funds were not sufficient. Now he purchases cheap chemical additives and other Western poison for food production, and nobody monitors the quality. Profit multiplies, but people's health is not considered. Another example of how rats take advantage of the quality control absence in the devastated country is that a large batch of chicken drumsticks of unknown origin was received there in bulk. Also, after the beginning of the NATO intervention in Libya, the ships of various countries, mostly Western, started polluting Libyan territorial waters. On January 31st, it was reported that an Israeli ship was dumping radioactive waste off the Libyan coast. News of the resistance. The rat model of freedom is the freedom to kill with impunity. Constant skirmishes take place in every Libyan city and town with more than one occupational grouping. These clashes are more or less competitive struggle between the bandits. The largest and most famous turmoil was a clash between gangs Nabasi and Albani in Tripoli. A showdown began on January 7 after the murder of Naji al-Albani, the head of the Albani gang. He was a major drug dealer, and the gangs didn't share the drug market. Naji al-Albani was put to the deathly rakes according to the latest rat trend, and understandably his gang militants were unhappy. The Nabasi gang, as a side note, is the largest Tripoli-based gang and has managed to ruin many lives. Therefore, clashes with heavy weapons, including RPGs, were carried out not only by Albani gang members, but smaller bands and local youth as well. The Nabasi gang was under the regime Minister of Interior patronage and performed the functions of the police in between robberies. So demonstrators, who at first demanded justice from the authorities, which naturally never came, set roadblocks and set fire to the entourage's tires, and then began a firefight with the Nabasi gang. The fighting continued for 4 days, and according to witnesses, tanks were even used. A few buildings were set on fire, and the Nabasi gang lost about 100 fighters and was temporarily kicked out of the Midiga base. Battles in different areas of the city to secure control over Tripoli occurred daily. The same situation happens all over Libya. Battles take place in every gang-occupied city. Citizens, regardless of age, began making their wills in case of a violent death, because no one knows where and how it will happen, by a stray bullet or a car bomb fragment. The puppet regime once again ordered the gangs to leave the cities, and for non-compliance, as usual, promised to use force to suppress these gangs. To concoct the illusion of NATO puppets' concerns about the people of Libya is the purpose of such declarative instructions. More than a week has passed, and the rats are still robbing other cities, which is not surprising, because the occupation regime members obtain their share of the booty. News of the resistance. Rats' liberty equals serfdom with old and new masters. From the very beginning, NATO operations of Libya's so-called revolutionists resulted in the raising of flags of former colonialists England, France, Italy, and USA. It is true that the USA had no share in African colonies, but the country was established by Europeans, so USA can also be described as a colonial power towards Africa. So near the rat flags also flew the four countries' flags. Members of gangs and traders happily welcomed the return of old masters. That was the dream of the rat servants, to choose masters. They need mastership and guidance because they have no capability or any desire to do anything on their own. Masters require adoration, and now they have plenty of it, because in every country a Judas may be found, ready to meet occupants with smiles. Now on streets, buildings, and cars are flags and symbols of the masters that have returned and are founding a new era of serfdom in Libya. Flags of colonialists and enemies which were burned in the Libyan Jamahiriya are now flying in an occupied country and are considered symbols of freedom. That is the result of the rat revolution. Serfs have no desire for history. Even graves of British soldiers who died during World War II were destroyed towards the end of 2011 by rat bandits. On the 16th of January, rats started taking down monuments dedicated to the Libyan fighters for independence who took part in the battle against the Italian invasion on the 8th of June 1912. To serfs, any history and even science is to be destroyed. And because of that, historical monuments and centers of science, the mathabas, are to be demolished. Universities and schools are not rebuilt after NATO strikes and rats' gunfire. Buildings look like slums. High education under the plans of the colonialists is to be available only for the puppet members of the occupation regime and their family members. Besides their old masters, Libyans are introduced to new ones, Qatar and Israel. Flags of both are also visible in Libyan cities. Qatar was the main sponsor of the Arab Spring, and Qatari henchmen were present in the occupational administration. Qatar also supplied rats with weapons during the entire campaign. In 2011, revolutionists accused Muammar Gaddafi for having connections to Israel, but now Israel supplies police cars to the rat government. Those cars are painted in the colors of the Israeli flag. News of the Resistance. Liberty, as the rats understand it, is a liberty of corruption, patronage, or favoritism bestowed on the basis of family relationships in business and politics. This so-called revolution was started by former clerks of the Jamahiriya and by so-called intellectuals. They wanted more power and money. Some of them had left Libya long before NATO's invasion. They happily contributed to the anti-Libyan propaganda by slinging mud at their motherland. Only after the NATO invasion did they come back to Libya. And after returning, they took positions in colonial administration and have been helping invaders establish a dictatorship of chaos in the country. As a reward, they took the liberty of stealing, fulfilling all their desires at the expense of the people. They had started stealing during the period of 2011. They stole artifacts from museums, the country's gold, cars, and property of the citizens. They finished the process of devastation in the country, which was totally ruined by war. Even resources granted for wounded rebel hitmen and medical care became the object of their thievery. And because of this, the rebel hitmen frequently made attacks on hospital personnel in the country where they were getting their therapy. Many representatives of the so-called TNC left Libya at the end of 2011, having in their bank accounts huge sums of money that was the property of the Jamahiriya. Now, common enemies and traitors still hate each other, but are ready to unite for a short time for mutual profit. The Rat administration has at last recognized the facts of their plundering of more than half the country's budget. Minister of Zidane, for example, cribbed about 5 billion dinars, about $4 billion on office furniture purchased for the offices of the ministry. About 20 billion dinars, about $16 billion were taken by other thieving members of the regime. Nepotism is widely implemented. Every official wants to help his relatives. Fatima al-Kamrush, the former Rat Minister of Healthcare of the regime, helped her sister get a position. She also appropriated money assets and cribbed them supposedly on development of medical care centers. No known center got money. Instead, Fatima returned to Ireland, where she bribed the Lord's Hospital Administration in Dublin into getting a position as an ophthalmologist. The head of the regime, Mohammed Maghrif, appointed his daughter and niece as advisors. That fact is widely discussed on different rat pages around the internet. As in every country that is occupied, when rotation of officials takes place, the people are persuaded that the new officials will look into documents and immediately begin to solve state affairs. But the truth is that officials have no concern of others' needs. They just want to get to people's assets stealing before they escape the country at the first opportunity. Instability of state power is a benefit to the occupational regime. Meanwhile, Libyans wait for the disorder to end, thinking that when it does, the country's agony will stop. But the disorder is natural for those who have taken power in Libya with the help of NATO. They blamed the Jamahiriya and created instability, and now are out of control. This leaves them many opportunities to steal and grab state assets. Use of the resistance. People are tired of constant lies and scandal among regime officials. They've tried to live with constant fear of taking a bullet from or becoming a prisoner of different gangs. Even in the city of Bani Walid, parents don't have the courage to allow their daughters to walk through the city alone, because in every city, alcohol or drug-intoxicated bandits drive around. To meet with them would not be a gift to anyone. They kidnap girls for their harems and force them to prostitute. More gifts of Western democracy. People think about the Jamahiriya with love and nostalgia. Even some NATO supporters are sorry for their collaboration with the West. So, on the streets fly more and more green flags. More and more citizens willingly and openly share their views. Step by step, they're losing the burden of fear and are beginning to understand that NATO's puppets are going to take even more lives. And, as evidence, you will observe videos and photos showing green flags on the streets of Libyan cities at the end of January 2013.
Jamahiriya TV. Jamahiriya First Channel. Our movement will be approved by history.